Okay, so we are going to skip N and we're going to skip O because we'll get to the ideas in O later. But in this page, the last paragraph we're going to focus on is M. Some looters, meanwhile, aren't affiliated with the protesters' causes at all. Instead, they seize the moment to cause what? Chaos and destruction. And we can think of seizing the moment as an important concept. This might be what's happening in videos where white people can be seen knocking out windows and ransacking businesses, though it's not yet clear to what extent the radical left and white nationalist groups are said to have infiltrated some of the protests and have been instigating some of the mayhem. So now look at these new words. So now we're pointing to, again, who's doing the looting. Okay, is it peaceful protesters? Is it people that have certain issues with something, as seen in IJ, K, and L in those paragraphs? Or is it other groups as well, people who aren't minorities and or low income? So, of course, there's two groups, the radical left, but then also on the other extreme, white nationalists. It's interesting, two opposing groups, right, both coming and doing the same thing in the midst of protests. So some of the leaders, of course, are supposed to do that. And the concepts, so we know that that's some of the who doing the looting are those groups of people. And then some of the concepts used to make sense of what's going on, what they're creating, is that they use the words infiltration, instigation, and mayhem. That's what they're doing. That's what they're creating. And of course, that detracts from the protest. So the question that I'm asking myself is, doesn't it seem wrong to disturb a peaceful protest or to disturb people's just and righteous causes for protest? If so, doesn't that mean that the radical left and the white nationalists are doing something morally wrong? Are they not infringing on the right for people to peacefully protest and to get their point across? So it's interesting to think about the ethics of protests, the ethics of civil protest, what is morally permissible, what's not morally permissible, and how groups or individuals can interfere with the rights of others to protest things that they think are morally wrong and need to be righted. So the ethics of protest in and of itself, I think, is an interest. Not only the ethics of how should the protesters conduct themselves, but also how should others conduct themselves in response to protesters. How do we respect the rights of protesters? To what extent? It certainly seems like the radical left and the nationalists are not respecting their right, the motivations and the themes of many of the protesters, that they're actually violating them. And so they're violating the rights, and a lot of people would say this is moral, and so they'd say that these two groups are doing something wrong. Of course, in their eyes, they have their counter-arguments as to why they're not. They might actually say they're morally obligated, but that's a whole other discussion to get into. Okay, so that's all I have for this video.